Yo, yo, yo. Welcome back into another episode of Jake's Takes. I am your host, Jake Massucci, and today I am super excited for another edition of the show. Today it is just me. We're doing our college football preview, going over the whole AP Top 25, which I'm super excited for. I'll talk about sleepers. I'll talk about teams that I think will do really, really good this year and teams that I'm not as high on. So, very excited for that. It was time to get back into sports, and yeah, it was a lot of fun doing that. And then after that, I do give a little running update as well. Talk about my plans for future marathons. Talk about how my run's been going, and how often I'll be talking about that. And I talked about it a little bit in there, but it'll happen every once in a while. But I do want to keep you guys updated as I'm young and I'm doing my marathons, which, yeah, I mean, I think it's cool stuff. So I wanted to kind of talk about it and go from there. So first we got college football preview, and then we'll talk about running a little bit. So without further ado, I'm going to cue the music. All right, welcome back into the show, and let's get right into it. We're going to be doing our college football preview, so I'm going to get started real quick here, and let's get going. So Ohio State, they won it all last year. They were very, very good last year. I mean, it was kind of ridiculous near the end of the season. Stood no chance. Jeremiah Smith, unbelievable. They got so many guys on that team that was just incredible. The fact that Will Howard did what he did to finish the year was really insane stuff. And looking at college football this year, it's really interesting because looking at it last year, I kind of fell off watching it a little too much and podcasting with it every day as I was traveling with the team and things like that. But I really got into the previews. And with Ohio State, all I was talking about was how good Jeremiah Smith was going to be and how unbelievable this team was. And then they finally solidified that and became that team. And looking at them this year, they still got a decent amount back. It's just going to be very much about figuring out, okay, how is this talent going to coincide with each other? So the key players they got back is Jeremiah Smith, of course. He's probably the best player coming back. He's just flat out ridiculous. Then Caleb Downs, also one of the best defensive players coming back. He was an absolute stud. I talked very highly about him last year with Ohio State. And then you got Carnell Tate, fantastic wide receiver that will really help their wide receiver room, and Max Clare, who's tight end there. So they got a lot of help, but they do not have Will Howard, which in college football, in all of this, you got to have a quarterback. And that's going to be really interesting to see where Ohio State goes. My main question for them looking at them is, will it be Julian Sayin or will it be Lincoln Kienholz? We really don't know. Lincoln's been there a while and has been going after that job for a decent amount of time now. And so is Julian Sayin. They're both former 5-stars, both incredible quarterbacks at the high school level. So it's going to be really interesting to see, they're not going to have that much, experience going into it. And their first game, they got to see Texas at home. So it's just gonna be we're expecting a ton from a quarterback that just has not played very much. So my main question with Ohio State is, okay, quarterback. How can this quarterback take this team to the heights that they went last year? That loss to Michigan really it solidified their season, because then they turned it around and went off in the playoff and looked like the team that I was talking about them being the whole season. So Ohio State this season, to me, I think they can be very good. I'm not sure, because the quarterback, like, I really need to see it, So I'm high on Ohio State. I have them top 3 in the Big Ten, but I'm not going to pick them to win it all or anything like that because I'm not sure if I trust the quarterback at this stage. For all I know, Julian Sayin or Lincoln Kienholz could be unbelievable, and Ohio State could win it all again. But if you're looking at it from a logic perspective and you're looking at it as a whole, I can't say like that I think Ohio State's just going to go back to back. It's not very clear there. It's kind of the same way I was with Michigan last year where they just lost a lot. They still lost a lot. They're bringing a lot back as well, but it's too much to say, okay, they're going to go back to back. All right, let's go with Texas. Okay, they're actually AP poll number 1. I wanted to start with Ohio State because they won it all. So let's go with Texas. Some of their key players, as I'm looking down the list that I made. Anthony Hill Jr., who's their middle linebacker, Colin Simmons, Malik Muhammad, Michael Taff, and Quinn Weaver. Quinn Weaver is the only offensive player. He's the running back in their room, and he was pretty good last year. They have a lot of defense back. Their D-line is going to be legit. It was very, very good. And then Muhammad, who's their cornerback, he was outstanding last year. Texas had a great D-line and great cornerbacks that really just made it difficult on everybody. And if you remember right, they were really, really close to Ohio State last year in that playoff. So I'm really looking forward to Texas. I think they have legitimate studs on the defensive end. And the question is how good is Arch Manning? I think a lot of people are just like giving him flowers because he has the Manning name. And for me, it's just like, I don't know yet. Like I got to see it. It's the same thing with like Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kienholz. Like those are just guys that don't have the Manning name. So I got to see it. With Arch Manning, it seems like everybody's like, oh, we've seen it before. Like he's incredible. Like he's Peyton Manning's nephew, like he's going to have all the Manning tactics like right away. And it's going to be outstanding right away. This Texas O-line isn't crazy, and you're playing in the SEC. You're playing Ohio State the first game. If you're looking at some of your key games, here's your key games. Okay. You're at Ohio State. You're at Florida. You're home against Oklahoma. You're at Georgia, and you're home against Texas A&M. To be honest with you, I don't really love that schedule. At Florida is a very, very tough game. DJ Lagway looked awesome last year. And I know there's going to be up and downs. We're going to talk about them probably later in the podcast with like the injuries and all that. Like Lagway, you don't know if he's healthy, blah, 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 blah. Okay. But at Florida, still a very tough game. Oklahoma, very much improved. They have a great defense. They're going to be a tough team to beat. And then at Georgia is just the one where I'm like, okay, like how do we expect them to win that game? Georgia's going to look really, really good defensively. They lost some things. We're going to talk about them later, but winning at Georgia and just expecting it is just such a tough thing to go. So I was kind of shocked that in the AP poll, they were over the next team that we'll talk about, who is number 2. Just because like I feel like there's a lot to be desired with questions on Arch Manning and the offense. I'm not sure if they'll be able to play to the same standard. Quinn Ewers was incredible last year, but I do think Texas will be very, very good. I don't like how favorable their schedule is. That's part of the reason I'm not picking them to win the SEC. Okay, let's switch over to Penn State. Okay, so Penn State is number 2 in the country right now, and to me, I think they should be number 1. On paper, they are flat out incredible. Yes, they had a very easy schedule in the playoff last year. They were able to make it to the semifinal and lose to Notre Dame. But if we're looking at the key players that they got back, they got Anthony Hill Jr., middle linebacker, Colin Simmons. I'm looking at Texas's list. Sorry. Let's look at Penn State. So Nicholas Singleton, running back, Danny Dennis Sutton, the left end, Drew Aller, Katron Allen, AJ Harris is the main list, and Penn State, like if we're looking at that, that's a lot of studs coming back, like a lot. Okay. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, we've been talking about them for 3 years on this podcast. They're incredible, flat out incredible. And we've been talking about Drew Aller. And I remember releasing a reel with Connor maybe 2 years ago now, and the fact of us talking about how we like Drew Aller. There's plenty of stuff with Drew Aller that's been up and down and all that, but this is his 4th year now. Like he has developed into a solid quarterback, and you saw it in some of those games. He had an incredible game against USC where like he was throwing into those windows. He's starting to throw more interceptions, and we talked about last year how that's actually a good thing. It means he's trying to make the reads, he's trying to make the plays. So with Penn State here, I really think that they're going to be legitimate. They have so much coming back. Their defense is very, very good. They actually have a new defensive coordinator in Jim Knowles, who they took from Ohio State. I think he's going to reinvigorate that defense, make them even better. And to me, I'm very excited. Yes, Abdul Carter's a big loss. Yes, they lost some things on defense, but they have a lot coming back here that's really going to be tough for them. And offensively, like, they run through those two running backs, and Drew Aller's able to hopefully get some receivers. I think receivers is kind of the main question. And the other main question for Penn State is, like, can James Franklin get the job done? Now it's on James Franklin. Like, okay, this is the best team you're going to get. You're AP poll number 2. And in my eyes, it's the best team on paper in the country. Okay, so can you get it done this year? That's my main thing. Like, you have to get it done when you're kind of like the favorites almost. And I really think Penn State's very good. If we're looking at some of their key games, they're home against Oregon. They play at Iowa. They play at Ohio State, and home against Indiana. So, some tough games. They get Oregon at home. The Ohio State game is a big-time game, and it'll be very interesting to see. And then you get Indiana at home, and Iowa, that's just another tough road game, So I'm expecting them to win against Oregon, Iowa, and Indiana. If they have to drop one game, I would expect it to be at Ohio State, just because it's at Ohio State. But Penn State, to me, I feel like they got to be the clear favorites out of the Big Ten. They're very, very tough to beat. Over there, and if there's any year for them to win the Big Ten, it is this year, 100%. Okay, let's switch over to number 4 in the country, Clemson. So some of their key players coming back: TJ Parker at the left end, Peter Woods, Avion Terrell, Blake Miller, Cade Klubnik. So that's 3 defensive guys, 2 offensive guys. Okay, Cade Klubnik is the main name coming back. Outstanding quarterback. He was very, very good for them last year. They were able to sneak into the playoff last year. But the thing with this Clemson team that the reason why they're number 4 in the country is they have like over 16 starters coming back this year. So there's a lot of people back, and they're like the clear favorite in the ACC because their schedule is very, very weak. So if we're looking at it that way with Clemson, like on paper, everything about them says like you should buy in, you should be really, really good. And to me, like as an ACC winner and all that, I'm perfectly fine with saying, okay, I buy into that. And I actually think with their first game against LSU, I actually think they're going to win that game. And I'll talk about that a little later when I talk about LSU. But, if we're looking at the question for this team, the question is like, can they win in the playoff? Because they're gonna play some tough games. The tough games on the schedule are LSU, at home against SMU, at North Carolina. You could say it's tough. I mean, kind of giving Belichick the benefit of doubt there, but I don't trust North Carolina. At Louisville, who beat them last year, at South Carolina, and then at Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech's pretty good this year, so watch out for that game. So now if you're looking at Clemson, like this is your best team in a while. You've built for this. Dabo doesn't use the portal. So it's going to be about here, okay, does continuity work in today's college football? That's my question here. And I'm really excited to see it because I do like Klubnik. I do like what they've done. I was in on them a year or 2 ago. I'm not sure if I'm in on them this year. I do think they'll win the ACC because I don't think there's much of a challenge from anybody else. But do I trust them to win in the playoffs? No, not going to lie. I don't think they're playing enough tough games, and I think somebody would beat them in the playoff. Not going to lie. Okay, let's look at number 5, Georgia. Some of their key players: Christian Miller, CJ Allen, and then KJ Bolden. Those are all defensive guys. And my question here is, will Gunnar Stockton be the right guy? We saw him a little bit last year. It seemed like Georgia was kind of like reinvigorated and like him as a leader, which is a great sign. There were a lot of missteps with Carson Beck, which we'll talk about when we get to Miami. But Looking at Georgia here, I just don't see enough talent for them to be like my pick. Last year, they were my pick. I really, really liked them last year. I was all in on the Carson Beck train. And this year, I just like the more and more I watched Gunnar Stockton, the more and more I was like, okay, I don't really love this guy. I love that they got Zachariah Branch. I think they're going to use him very well and use him very nicely. They need to get their running game going. When Kirby Smart has his best teams, they have a out stud running back. Like that's outstanding. Like the Todd Gurley's of the world, the DeAndre Swifts of the world. You know, Georgia always has it going when they can figure out their running game. And like they haven't had that in a little while. You know, so I think this defense will figure it out. There's questions about their defense, but my main question is will Gunnar Stockton be that right guy? Their key games this year, they play at Tennessee versus Alabama, versus Ole Miss, versus Florida, versus Texas, and that's a lot of home games. You know, so it gives them a legitimate chance to win the SEC again in the regular season. Hesitant to say that I'd pick them for the SEC, but I do think that they're going to be very, very good this year. I love Zachariah Branch. Like, he's an absolute stud. I mean, they're ranked number 5 for a reason, you know, and I think they could maybe win 1 or 2 playoff games, but I would be hesitant to pick them overall, you know. So with Georgia here, we're kind of sliding them at 5 and leaving them there. Notre Dame, they're at 6. My key players for Notre Dame: Jeremiah Love, Leonard Moore, Wagner, their tackle, and then Malachi Fields, another receiver. Notre Dame here, the question is quarterback. You know, CJ Carr is probably going to end up be the quarterback. What does he look like? You know, like are they just going to stick with the running game with Jeremiah Love, which they probably should do, not going to lie. Or is CJ Carr just so dynamic that they're able to throw down the field Malachi Fields the whole time, and they just have a really, really versatile offense, just like last year with Riley Leonard. And Riley Leonard, yes, it was more running, but like, can CJ Carr actually bring some passing out of this offense? And Notre Dame was really good last year with just where they're running style. I mean, Riley Leonard led them to the finals, you know? So they got a decent amount back. I'm actually pretty excited for them. Their key games, they play at Miami first, then they play home against Texas A&M. They play at Arkansas and home against Boise State. Could count home against USC. I'm not going to count that. Notre Dame here, I'm actually pretty high on them again this year. I think they'll be very good. Jeremiah Love's a stud. And the fact that when they go through their run game, and the fact that Marcus Freeman has actually, like, if you look at the past couple of years in the recruiting tales, Marcus Freeman has actually out-recruited where Brian Kelly has been. With Brian Kelly, they were like 10th or 12th in the country in recruiting. With Marcus Freeman, they're 6th or 7th, which is flat out insane, you know? So looking at Notre Dame here, I actually really, really like them. I think they got a very nice schedule. This at Miami game is probably the one that I'm circling the most, just because it's like, okay, it's CJ Carr's first game. It's a big game, you know? So like, I don't know what will happen there. To be honest, even though I don't love Miami, which we'll get to, I wouldn't be shocked if they lose that game, but that's not going to be bad because it's one loss, you know, and Notre Dame's had plenty of losses where it's just like, they lost to Northern Illinois last year, you know, so maybe they lose one of those kind of games. So with Notre Dame, I'm not worried at all. They're a very, very good team, and I'm excited to see them again this year. Okay, let me turn the page and let's keep going. So Oregon here, okay? Key players for Oregon. They're sitting at number 7 in the poll. Dylan Theinman, strong safety, Malachi Hughes, Isaiah World, and then DJ Ukulele's brother, Mateo, I think. I think it's that. Okay. So that's a lot of defense. It's 2 defense, 2 offense. The fact that they got a solid running back and Malachi Hughes back is huge. The question is for Oregon is the defense. You know, the defense has been up and down throughout Dan Lanning's time there. So it's going to be, can they have a dominant defense? Because Dan Lanning came in and people were like, okay, Oregon's defense is never going to be a problem anymore. And it was pretty dang good last year. Like, Oregon was number 1 in the country. They were outstanding football team. Won the Big Ten in their first year in it. It was kind of ridiculous how much they dominated teams. And then they saw Ohio State, really, really dynamic offense, and people were like, "Oh, Oregon's defense is so much better than it used to be. It's a very, very good defense." And then that offense just pummeled them. Ohio State's just absolutely pummeled them, and they had no chance in that playoff game. So, how good can this defense be? Can it be as good as last year? Can they like dominate throughout the whole season and dominate in the playoffs? That's my question here. Um, I think it's going to be interesting. Looking at Oregon's schedule, they're home against Oklahoma State. That's their big out of conference game. They play at Penn State, home against Indiana, at Iowa. I actually think there's a legitimate chance for Oregon to win the Big Ten again. That at Penn State game is really the biggest game on there. Yes, at Iowa. I keep adding that. I actually think Iowa's going to be pretty good this year. Home against Indiana, you got to add them. But again, it's a home game. Like Oregon should be able to handle that pretty handily. Indiana struggled with ranked teams last year. So if we're looking at it this year, I'm very excited to see that Oregon and Penn State game because it's a little early. I could see Penn State maybe like overlooking and looking at Ohio State and stuff as the main contest, and Penn State going through some early humps. You know, I think Dante Moore is going to be pretty good as their quarterback. He's sat behind Dylan Gabriel last year. You know, he had some time to develop. He was solid at UCLA. It didn't really end up the way that they wanted when he started as a true freshman, but now he had a year to learn under the same offensive coordinator. And I feel like Oregon's offense is not going to miss a beat. So it's going to be more about, can this defense figure it out? So I'm very excited for that Penn State game. And I think Oregon's got a better chance to win the Big Ten than a lot of people think. Okay, Alabama, number 8. Their key players, I have a whole list of people for their key players. Ryan Williams, Caden Proctor, Jaden Roberts, Tim Keenan, Bray Hubbard, Deontay Lawson, and then Parker Braceford. A ton of O-line. Alabama's got a stacked O-line. I listed Braceford, Roberts, and Proctor. And Proctor was a stud last year, and the fact that he's back, it's just awesome. And the fact that I'm listing 3 O-linemen, that's huge. It's huge. So now the only question for Bama is, how good is Ty Simpson? You know, and I know a lot of these questions have been quarterback related, but Bama's got everything else. Everything else. And the fact that they're 8 kind of shocks me. And I think it has to do a lot with what happened last year. It was the first year. They lost a lot of games they shouldn't have. Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, a lot of stuff where it was just like, man, what's going on? But Bama scares me this year. They're very, very good. And Ty Simpson's former 5-star, like worked with that offensive coordinator before. Ryan Grubb's back in Alabama with Kalen DeBoer. I'm very scared of Alabama. Like, to be honest with you, I'll say it now. They're my pick to win it all. I think they have the most talent. I think Ryan Williams is going to have a Heisman campaign as a number 1 receiver and compete with Jeremiah Smith as one of the best receivers we've ever seen in college football. And I also think that Ty Simpson is going to be very, very good with this O-line in front of him. There's so many weapons here for Bama to feast on. And I'm very, very excited to see how it rolls. If you're looking at the key games, they play at Georgia. They play home against Tennessee. They play at South Carolina, home against LSU, and home against Oklahoma. So if I had to pick what I think was going to happen in the SEC, I would say Georgia beats Alabama in the regular season. Georgia wins the SEC in the regular season and plays Texas in the SEC championship. One of them win the SEC championship. I don't know what happens. But then Bama wins the playoff. That's what I'm thinking. I think Bama competes with everybody, is near the top. You know, like it's one of the best teams. They're in the playoff, and they win the playoff. That would be my prediction. I absolutely love this Bama team. I think there's so much talent here. I love that they have so much O-line back. I think it's really going to help Simpson. And I also think Ryan Williams is one of the most dynamic receivers I've ever seen. So I'm very much in on Bama this year. kind of shocked me as I did more and more research because I was like, I like them, but I don't know if I'm going to be this high on them. But I'm very much this high on them. I think they're flat out awesome, and I think they're going to win it all this year. And I'm kind of shocked they're 8. I kind of am because there is so much talent here. It's kind of unbelievable. Okay, let's look at LSU. So their key players: Garrett Nussmeier, Ashton Stamps, Harold Perkins Jr. Harold Perkins Jr. coming off an injury. Hopefully he is fantastic this year. Here's my question with LSU. Garrett Nussmeier is unbelievable at quarterback, so that is not a problem there. But my question is how good will everything else be? Because according to the transfer portal, they had near the number 1 class. They were outstanding. It was them and Texas Tech near the top. And they also loaded up on that O-line in that portal. So like supposedly they have a great O-line. But the question has always been how good can this O-line be for Nussmeier? And it hasn't been that good in the past. So my question is how good will everything around Nussmeier be? Because he's a stud. It's pretty clear. And LSU's got a tough schedule. They got a brutal schedule. They play at Clemson first game, home against Florida, at Ole Miss, home against South Carolina, home against Texas A&M, at Alabama, at Oklahoma. That is just a very, very tough SEC schedule. And, I'm looking at it. I'm looking at LSU, and I don't trust it this year. I fell for it a couple of years ago, the Jaden Daniels year. And, I was like, man, like, this team's, like, really, really good. I'm not falling for it again. Like, they got the portal class just like that year. They got everything around it. They have the quarterback, but I really, really don't trust it. I think Nussmeier is going to put up some numbers, and some weeks it's going to look outstanding. But there's going to be other weeks where I think it just really, really falls apart. And, like, it's just a lot on Nussmeier's shoulders for me. And I don't know if LSU has enough talent to overcome that. So LSU is one of my under teams. Like, I'd be lower on. I don't think they deserve to be 9 in this AP poll, but that's where they're at. So, okay, let's switch to Miami, the last one in this top 10, and then we're going to take a little break. So, Miami, looking at their key players, Mayago, who's their right tackle, Ruben Bain Jr., right end, and then Carson Beck, quarterback. So, those are the main players there. Miami was very, very good last year with Cam Ward. They just missed the playoff. Had a very good year. With them, my question is can Carson Beck lead them to wins? I don't love all the stuff they brought back. I think they're going to have a really good defensive line. And their defense can be really good, but I just don't know what's going on with all this Carson Beck stuff. There's so much about him that just has made me really dislike him. There was a lot last year with Gunnar Stockton coming in and Georgia feeling energized that Gunnar Stockton was in. That rubbed me the wrong way. And then the whole thing with him transferring to Miami, the whole thing with his girlfriend and all that, I don't really follow that stuff. So the fact that I know about it is kind of ridiculous. So for me, is can he lead them to wins? Their key games, their schedule's actually kind of light. They play Notre Dame first. They play Florida at home. They play Louisville at home. And then their only road game that's tough is at SMU. So that's why a lot of people will be like, oh, you should take the over. There's not a hard schedule. It'll be fine. I'm telling you, I think Notre Dame's going to kick their ass in week 1. And then I also think Florida will kill them. I think Lagway is going to come in with revenge on his mind. And I think all Florida is going to do that. And I think they're going to torch them in Miami. I don't think this is a great year for Miami. I think they're really going to fall apart this year because there's so much variance that could happen. Like Miami could be undefeated and be awesome. And you guys will be sending me this clip of me thinking they're terrible and being like, haha, Jake, you were wrong. But I'm telling you, I really don't see it. I don't trust Carson Beck as a leader. And when I don't trust the guy's leader, I feel like it can really, really just fall apart. So with Miami this year, I'm very low. Miami and LSU. I kind of didn't really want to talk about either of them, but I'm low on those two. So those are my top 10. That's the top 10. Talking about each top 10. So we're going to take a break and then we'll do speed runs for the rest of the top 25. All right. Welcome back into the show. And let's go through the rest of the top 25. I'm going to give you like just the first thoughts that come to my mind for each team in the top 25. We're going to like zoom through this fast, and then I'll get to some sleepers a little later. Okay. Arizona State, first thought that comes to my mind, Dillingham, unbelievable coach. You know, what he's done with this team is just incredible. And then their quarterback is going to be ridiculous for them. I think Arizona State will be right back near the top of the Big 12. They're awesome. Okay, Illinois, they have big expectations this year. A lot coming back. They'll be in a stacked Big 10. I feel like it's going to be up and down. I'm not crazy high on them. I like that they're ranked this high because I think they're going to be talented, but I think it's going to be very up and down. I don't love their schedule crazy amount. Okay, South Carolina here. Sellers, absolute stud. And there's so much on this defensive end. They did get injured a little bit in the offseason. There's high expectations, just like Illinois. I think you should be a little lower on South Carolina. I don't love them a crazy amount this year either. Michigan, Bryce Underwood, that's the main guy that shows up for me. True freshman quarterback. The fact that they're 14 makes sense. The defense is awesome. I'm going to give you a little more on Michigan just because it's in town. And the thing is, though, is I'm not high on them finishing with like a great record. I play Oklahoma on a conference who's very, very good this year. And it's true freshman quarterback. You know, you can't expect 10 wins out of a true freshman quarterback. You just can't. I think we're 9 wins or 8 wins. And I'm not expecting like a playoff berth or anything like that. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, like, don't like it's okay. You know, like it's still plus because all we want is Bryce to develop, and we should be looking at next year. That's my take for Michigan. Florida, DJ Lagway is the main guy, and my question there is, can he stay healthy? You know, like that's going to be the question because if he's healthy, they're 10 wins. If he's not healthy, they're 7 wins because their schedule is brutal. I think it's one of the hardest schedules in the country. That's my take on Florida. It's all depends on Lagway's health, but I like them if Lagway's healthy. SMU, I really like their coach. I like what they did there. Last year was a great story for them. I'm kind of in still. I'm still in, and that's just like gut reaction there. ACC is a little weak. They get that home game with Miami, and I like them. I like them. I think they'll be pretty good again. Kansas State, gut reaction here. I really like them. I think they have a lot coming back here. Big 12 is very spread out, very open, and they're near the top of the favorites list in the Big 12, and I think they should. I'm very high on Kansas State this year. I think they'll be good. Oklahoma, I'm high on them too. I like how much they really develop their defense. You know, Brent Venables really spent a lot of time trying to get that done with their defense. I think it's going to be very good. Got a new quarterback this year. That's my question there. Like, how good will it be? But they're going to be a whole lot better than last year, 100%. Texas A&M, a lot of people are very high on them because they have a great recruiting class. They have a lot coming back, and it's going to be very interesting. I'm actually a little lower. Texas A&M on paper a lot of the time looks great. I need to see more from this coach. Like, to be honest, I don't know like crazy much about him, but I think I just need to see a little more. I think the expectations are a little too high on them, so I'm a little lower. Indiana at 20. Their schedule's a lot harder this year, and I think Signegi and all this stuff about him like only winning and all that, it's kind of turning into a joke. I have them lower. I don't see them as a playoff team this year or anything like that. Ole Miss, I'm actually pretty high on. I think Lane Kiffin's like 100%. Like he can get it done and get 10 wins. He's a clear like you should bet on him. I think he'll be very good, and I think Ole Miss will be legit. Defensively is going to be the question there, but they got a new quarterback coming in that's a stud athlete, and I guess he graduated high school at age 15 and is already graduated with college, and he's 20 years old. That's kind of insane. Good for him. So that'll be interesting with Ole Miss. Okay, Iowa State. I think with them, you know, I was very high on them last year, Rocco Becht and all that. They're tough. They're tough because it's going to be about like can their receivers Can they replace receiving talent? Because both of them got drafted to the NFL. Rocco Beck's a stud. I'm gonna be a little lower than I was last year. I thought they'd be a clear playoff team last year, but I think that with the Big 12, like there's other teams that are a little better than them this year. I still think they'll be good, but maybe a little worse than last year. Texas Tech, very high on. They spent a lot in the portal. They did a lot to really help their defense, and their offense looked good. They upset Iowa State last year, and yeah, they got some weapons that really can just be tough. I'm pretty high on them. Normally, I try not to I try to be hesitant now because of what happened with LSU and me being crazy high on them. After the portal stuff, but I think with this Texas Tech team, I think it's actually going to work and blend together pretty well. So I'm pretty high on Texas Tech at 23. I think they could be a playoff team, and I think a lot of people should be considering picking them for the Big 12. Tennessee, I'm very much lower on. They just lost a lot, and they're playing a tough SEC schedule. I don't think they're going to be that good. I like what Josh Heupel does, but like losing Nico so late in the season and not being able to replace with a different quarterback, I feel like that's going to be tough for them, and I don't have much expectation there. Boise State, to be honest, I haven't done much research on Boise State. Gut reaction, I think they'll be worse than last year just because losing Ashton Genty is just so tough. I think that will kind of hinder them from being a playoff team there. Okay, let's look at some sleepers that I have for this year, and I'm just doing this off the top of my head. I haven't done a crazy amount of research on the sleepers part, but the main teams that I'm looking at is Georgia Tech. That's the main one that I'm very confident that I think people should go all in on. Haynes King is a flat out stud. And near the end of the year, Georgia Tech was playing really, really good football. I was very high on the fact of week 0, pick them over Florida State. And a lot of people called me crazy because Florida State had so many high expectations. And guess what? Florida State was 2-10, and Georgia Tech was really, really good at football. I think Georgia Tech's going to be very, very good again. They'll sneak up in that ACC. I think they're going to be near the top of it. They're not going to win it or anything crazy, but I do think they'll be a ranked team for most of the season and try to compete for a playoff spot. I think they could definitely do that. Texas Tech is another one that I will say is definitely a sleeper. I think out of the Big 12, you should be picking them. They are flat out studs. I mean, if you're looking at two Big 12 teams, it's Texas Tech and Kansas State. I feel like those are the teams you got to be looking at because they're returning a lot. Texas Tech went off in the portal, really tried to get more. So I think those are the teams you should be looking at if you're trying to look for sleepers. Another sleeper, I'll give you one more, is Louisville. Louisville has done a great job in the ACC of competing every single year. They beat Clemson last year. They're really doing a lot that is very good. So Louisville's another team that I think will surprise some people. Okay, and then if I'm looking at this, I feel like the only teams that I feel like are too high when I'm looking at them is LSU, Miami. Like I'm just very low on the fact that they'll be competing as well as they did last year. And then another team in the top 25, just off the top of my head, that I don't like is Indiana. I think Indiana will kind of fall apart. They're playing a tough schedule this year. And that 20 ranking is just a nod to last year. Those are my picks for this year. I'm pretty excited for college football. We got week 0 coming up next week. When this podcast will release on Monday of next week, because I'm recording this Thursday, August 14th. So it'll release that Monday. You'll see the whole preview and all that. All right. Welcome back into the show. And we're going to switch it up and do a little running update to close out this show. So I haven't done this very much. So, I'm excited to start this and try to update you guys on what I'm doing with my running. But, so we're kind of just winging it and seeing how it goes. So I'm excited for this. I'm kind of just looking at Strava and going to give you an update on like how I'm going to roll. But last year, I did end up running 2 marathons, which were flat out awesome. In October of last year, Brennan and I ran a marathon in Grand Rapids, and that was awesome. That one we really did a good job of training for, and we're kind of locked in for. Um, I talked about it a little bit, I think, with RC, but that one was a really good one because, as I talked about on the episode last year, it kind of like solidified, okay, like I can do this and I can really become like a real runner, which was really, really cool, you know. So that one felt really good, and we did a lot of training for that, and I felt good about that one there. If we're looking at my next marathon, which I did in May of this year, that one was a little bit different. Throughout the year last year, we ended up traveling a lot for our Horizon League games in January, February range, and it was kind of fun because like a lot of us as coaching staff and like all the coaching staff people and they include the managers, which was really cool. They would go lift, and I wasn't really in the lifting mode then, but like right around Christmas time, we went to Hawaii, and I got back into running mode, and I went on all these runs in Hawaii that I gotta pull up here on Strava because it's so far from it. But it was really cool because I was like, okay, I'm gonna go there and run every day. And I ran every day, and the views there are just awesome. If you can ever get to around Honolulu, Hawaii, I mean, the views there in Waikiki is just beautiful, flat out beautiful. Yeah, like day one there, I took it slow. I was like, all right, let's do like a 2 miler. I did a 2 miler. Then I did about a 5 miler the next day, and these were all just in the mornings, like because when I'm in Hawaii, like you would imagine, it's like, oh, you're just chilling on the beach all day. No, I'm not chilling on the beach all day. I'm working all day. The only time we had a little more time to ourselves for this trip, but like the only times we have to ourselves is that morning and then like in between games. Like there's nothing else. Most of the time we're either practicing, we're prepping, we're doing something, or there's a meal going on or something. Like something's happening for the most part. So the fact that I had these runs in the morning was just awesome. Yeah, so day 2 I did 5, and then day 3 I did 6. And then day 4 I did another 6. And then I did 2 as a recovery run to finish off. But and so it was 5 days running, and it was awesome. Like just the views were incredible. I did the Diamond Head Trail too, and it had some unbelievable pictures there. I'm gonna put some of the pictures in the podcast video so you guys can see it. But that really like reinvigorated me, and like I was like, hey, like I need to start running. And then if you look at my Strava, it seemed like I was dead between January and February, but I was not. I was like, okay, I got to find a way to get faster a little bit here. So what I would do is when all of them would go to the gym and get their workout in, I would go on the treadmill, and I try to do 2 3 mile runs where I'm just like up in the pace on the treadmill, like nonstop. Like just you start out, you get a groove, maybe that first mile, and then that second mile, like I'm just like trying to go all the way up to 12. Like really moving, and that way I could build speed and see how much like further I could go to get a little faster. So I did that probably around. It was mostly on the road trips. I wasn't doing it all the time. At school. I think I definitely could have been more consistent about it. But that was kind of it. And then it got warmish a little bit in March, and I started running a little bit. Um, and I was in good shape, like getting back into it. And I had already committed to a marathon in May. So I was like, all right, we can do it. And then around April, Siesta Key. We normally go to Siesta Key, so I did a lot of runs there. I did a 4 mile run where I moved. I went like 7:10 pace, which was really really good for me. And then I did a 12-mile run as well. in the heat, which was awesome. And I did it around an 8 pace. And after I did that run, I felt really, really good about the spot I was at running wise for May. And then April rolled around and we did a little bit. One of the ones I'm looking at right now that I really liked was my 9-miler with a 8:13 pace. Like right when you can get those low eights for like the 10-mile runs, it feels really, really good. And then around early May, I was working at the golf course, and school had like just gotten out, and I was really trying to get ready for this thing. So I was like, okay, I got to do like a 15 or a 20-mile run to make sure I'm ready for this thing, because I wasn't running every day to prep for it. I was running about 2 or 3 times a week, and before I was running like 4 or 5 times a week. So I was like, all right, I gotta lock in and get this running. So I was like, what if I just ran to Oakland? So I just left my house and was like, hey mom, do you want to meet at the golf course for lunch? And she was like, sure. And I left the house and ran straight up Crooks and ran right to Oakland, and that was around 15 miles. I had to loop it a little bit. I think it was around 13 or 14 miles. I looped it a little bit, so then I got to 15, and once I got there, I was like, there's no way I'm getting this up to 20. We're going to stick with 15. But that was a really good run. It was a little rainy that day. But once I did that run, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. This will be fine. And I really focused on like recovery, getting everything going. And then the marathon was in Grand Haven. To be honest, I was expecting it to be way more beautiful. I was like what it said was it was on the water. You could see the water most of the time when you run. And I was like, man, that sounds cool. It was not that impressive. The Grand Rapids one was way better. You were in the city, like um, there was a lot more people. It was a lot more well maintained. Grand Haven, it was just really, really small. There wasn't much going on there. I was at the local high school over there, and it was okay. But I did great in the marathon. I ended in 3 hours and 45 minutes, which was awesome, near an 18 pace. I felt really, really good. Um, I just wanted, my only goal out of it was to break my other one, is to get a little better. And I was 3:49 the first one and 3:45 this one. And as I've kept running and as I've kept in shape, like I'm not training for a marathon right now. And I've thought to myself, I was like, what's your plan? What's your deal with this thing? And it's been interesting. And I think what my deal is like I just want to get as low as I can while I'm young, because running means a lot to me, as I talked about in the last episode. But I don't want to be one of those people that are running marathons when they're like 35 and they're lugging their kids there. I don't want to do that. So for me, it's about, okay, I'm in the prime of my life right now. Like, how fast can you get on these things? Could you make it to Boston? Could you get that fast in order to do it? And I think that's kind of where it's leaning. That's where it's headed, you know? I want to get faster. I want to get into a position where I'm like super athletic and maybe possibly running in Boston. That'd be really cool. But there's also part of me that's like, we need to put on weight. I don't want to be 155 anymore. We got to be up to 175, like, and looking muscular. So like, it's a very delicate balance. And right now, like, I feel good about like not training for a marathon right now and not trying to get faster. I'm going to be in a position where it's going to be about, okay, I need to gain weight, right? So these running updates will happen every once in a while, probably more likely when I get back into marathon mode, because marathon mode is different. I'd like to do these running ones maybe every other month, something like that, just to keep you guys informed in it, because running's super cool. It's super awesome. And, I recommend it to everybody. It's really, really hard. And most of the time, like, if you're not serious about it and you're just an average person and you ask me like why I do it, I tell you it's because I'm crazy. And that's true. That's very, very true. I am crazy to be a runner and stuff, but like I can tell the people who are seriously thinking about it and people that are not. And the people that are seriously thinking about it, I'm like, hey, like if you do it and you do it consistently, like you're gonna love it. Like it's gonna be great for you. It's great for your health. It's great for your mental toughness. It's great for all of that. So, I do recommend it. I 100% recommend it if you're thinking about it. If you're not thinking about it, don't do it. Please don't, because like you don't need to. There's other ways to stay in shape and stay in all of that, but running is very, very it's a good habit to have. 100%. Okay. Yeah, looking at my future here right now, I'm not training for a marathon, so I'm thinking these running updates will happen. I mean, I might give you one before the end of the season of running, and then maybe around like that winter time when I start going on a lot of road trips and I'm rolling with speed and start actually like, hey, let's get ready for this May one, because next May is when I'm looking at going for another marathon. So once the other marathon starts, I'll probably give you guys another podcast like this and we'll really dive deep into the plan I'm going to do and how it's been going and all that stuff. But I do think it's fun to give a running update here and talk about it a little bit. And I also think it's good to talk about why you should do it. I've made a lot of friends off people that run, because the runners community, like everybody knows how hard it is. So the mutual respect you get is just flat out awesome. So my plan is to take the fall off of marathon training, and then I will roll back into it once January, February starts. So yeah. All right, that's going to wrap up the show for today. Thank you guys so much for listening, watching, wherever you're at. We did our college football preview, and then at the end, we added this running segment here. So looking at the future, we'll be back next week, either NFL or a week 0 reaction. I haven't decided where exactly we're going to go yet, and then we'll figure out if there's an add-on to the end of the episode as well. So thank you guys so much for listening, watching, wherever you're at. Give us 5 stars on Spotify and like and subscribe on YouTube. I will see you guys soon. Peace.